You see, she is the actress who plays the part of Snow, and when they asked her to play Jesus, she turned down the road.
It is so wonderful to see you over there in beautiful Tennessee. Nice to be home again.
Looks nice there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And there too, I love that fire you've got roaring behind you and your guitar.
Yeah. That goes in next. We can always use guitars.
That's shameful. I'm happy that you made some time to be able to sit with me. And it's almost like all of this work that started years ago now, we have a chance to revisit it and talk about some things that I think are really interesting for anybody who is coming into the music industry. When we talk about music, for me, as someone who's worked in human rights my entire life, I think about freedom of speech. And that's just how the arts, that's the way I think about art. I think about film and television and music as a way that people express important concepts and they share information in ways that can't really be just put into black and white words or prose or like a political speech.
That's the wonderful advantage of art, is that you can express yourself and totally get a point across without preaching, and I never liked that, I never liked preaching. So, but I think artists have a point of view that goes around. It's not black and white. It's a perspective that is particular to art.
From the beginning, I've been amazed at your history, and I would like to help your story be told to as many artists as possible, because I think that this is a time when people can express themselves musically in so many different ways, with technology advancing. And there are so many different avenues to explore and ways to sound and ways to record things, and that we've never had an opportunity before as civilization or as an artistic community. So when I've heard you talk about your experiences in the music industry, I'm always thinking that I wish the world could hear your stories as you tell them to me. And that is why I asked if we could do these video interviews, because even if we put together a book, or I typed up how I felt about it, or, we came up with various different ways to express it, I don't think there's anything as interesting as just listening to you tell these experiences that you've had. As a groundbreaking artist that succeeded in breaking new ground outside of what we consider to be the music industry.
Well, I didn't think of myself as a groundbreaker. I just had a particular way that I sang and a particular way that I wrote. And it was the God voice, it was what I listened to. It was the true who I was. And when I began, I didn't sound like other people who were on top 40 radio or even folksy radio, or, I didn't have a beautiful, smooth voice. I had a kind of grovelly voice, but that was the way I tried to sound like Joan Baez, but it just didn't come out that way. And I had always admired the Billie Holiday and Edith Piaf, and those were my soul. That they were what really inspired that expression, because they really communicated who they were. And I didn't realize how different I was at the time. I just thought, I'm a singer and I write songs, and it wasn't easy to have people take me seriously, when I first sang some of my songs, not to audiences. Now, when I sang out, it was, I felt like people uh, heard me, and got what I was saying. But when I went to different music business offices, it wasn't until I met Peter, who just saw something, that was special. And I, just did what I did. And from that point on, I never even considered doing anything different. I certainly didn't think of trying to do what other people did, because I knew I couldn't. There was no possibility of doing something that other people did. I could only do it a certain way. And it was working, and that was a wonderful thing. But we were in the midst of an era where it was a near renaissance on Earth. It really was. I mean, people were drawing from blues and rockabilly and country, and there was a great interest in all kinds of music. So things were being played on the radio that were everywhere. They were all over the eclectic spectrum. We would have, the Edwin Hawkins singers singing "Oh Happy Day," the when Jesus washed our sins away. I mean, you couldn't have a record like that on the radio now. It was just it was a time when so many different kinds of music were being played on mainstream radio, and that in itself made artists feel empowered, because, well, I'm different, but there's a lot of different stuff happening, so it's okay. But so the climate was embracing for artists. But there was an agenda in the industry itself that I didn't even realize there was an agenda. They were really pushing hard rock. They were really pushing testosterone. But that was the industry, and the industry was losing hold. And they didn't like that at all. They didn't like losing hold. They wanted to know if they put their money into someone, that person was going to make them a lot of money. That's what they wanted. That was the end goal. That was their point. They weren't interested in whether it meant something to some kid in a room who played, a Melanie record over and over and over again, and somehow that gave them some sort of feeling of who they were, that they shared some kind of emotion with any of the artists of the time, Linda Ronstadt or who, I don't know. I'm thinking, I can't remember anybody, except there weren't that many women. I'll tell you that. I didn't even think of that. It was very limited as far as how many women were played on mainstream radio. On WNEW-FM, I was the guest DJ, and they asked me to, gather some songs that I thought were important, and Carole King was one of them. When I first came out, I was just called a singer who just happened to write their own songs. There was no term singer-songwriter. At one point, they did call me the female Bob Dylan, because I wrote my own songs and sang them.
You seem to have this ability to take these times that I've experienced, and I'm sure a lot of other people have experienced them, and touch upon them in a way that made it easier to think about them, or, you know, feel like there was some way to not be, you know, in a bad state of mind because you went through something troubling. It was like suddenly things became a little bit lighthearted. And I guess that's the power of music and the power of art. So my next question is, when did you become so fluent artistically? Like, when did that happen for you?
Somehow I needed to express something that was going on inside of me, you know, just the angst of becoming, you know, a teenager and being the oddball and being the weirdo in school, you know, and needing to express those things, feeling like, are those really my parents? Maybe I'm adopted, you know, because at some point, you know, I questioned, how did I get here? Where am I? What is the meaning of all of this? Because up until that point, you know, I just was a kid who loved solitary time. I loved my time by myself. And fortunately, my parents let me have that time, you know. Maybe that might be considered bad parenting right now, but it was beautiful. It was the time that I could think about things and go off in my own little world. And as I grew up, we moved a lot. So I was always felt like the odd person out, you know. So writing music and lyrics and melodies just helped me. It was therapeutic for me, you know. It was my way of being able to get through a day.
You're so exceptionally brilliant at it that it's almost surreal. Like, it's almost like hard to believe that all of this poetic conceptualization of a life, an experience, could then be put so beautifully to music. It's otherworldly to me.
Yeah. I had never tried to write with anybody else, or even thought about it. I had such an introverted way of putting together a song that the thought of sitting down and hashing out lyrics or you know, melodies with somebody else I didn't ever even thought that was be a possibility. So I wrote a lot of songs. I have written, I continue to write. I have never stopped. I never got that dry spell that people seem to talk about. I There's everything in life. There's so much to look at. You know, every single thing has that other point of view that, you know, you can. It's an inspiration to create. Even the dullest moments have. Well, if you look at it from another perspective, it's all a song or a poem or lyrics or something, as silly as any of my songs. And I definitely write silly songs, you know. I mean, that's one of the things I can do.
They're just amazing.
So yeah, I've always written, and so I did write a lot of songs, and I continue to do that.
Would you have pursued your career in music if you hadn't met Peter?
I have this, even though I was very shy. I was very shy, but when it came to music, I just bypassed all of that. You know, I had to do this, you know, I had to do this. So if it wasn't for Peter, who was absolutely my champion, you know, he stood by me thick and thin. He stood by everything I ever did. He never, well, he implied that I might like to try things that some of the industry people wanted me to do, but he always knew that there was a line that I can't cross that line. If I cross that line, I don't know why I couldn't cross the line. The penalty would be eternal damnation. I don't know, you know. And that's I mean that's I it felt always felt really serious. And I always thought I guess the music that I created always felt a little bit like a sacred responsibility, because I feel like a direct line to a common denominator in people.
And you started to have international success, which really happened within the first few months. Beautiful People was recorded in a stolen recording session at CBS. That you were
yeah, Peter that was the era of the strawberry alarm clock and the marshmallows and the balloon farm, and those were the names, you know, Vanilla Fudge. And I was Melanie, nobody heard of me. So they would give him studio time. That they, you know, happy to have him record the marshmallows with their bubbling under hit. So I guess he figured my name starts with an M, that he would pretend that it was a Marshmallows recording studio time, and he booked it with full out orchestration. I sang Beautiful People with an orchestra live, and I was in a vocal booth. I mean, this was beyond reality to me. I mean, it was so amazing to be able to sing a note and have it crescendo out with all these string players and flute and cello. And I mean, this was a gift that I don't think many people ever experienced something like this, to have their song that was just me and my 3 or 4 chords, you know, playing. And then I heard it expand with counter melodies, you know. And that's why I love working with Bo, my son, because he has these counter melodies that expand what you did. They don't change what you did, they expand what you did. That was an amazing experience to be in the studio. I've had some really wonderful studio experiences. That was one of the most amazing, because first of all, I didn't know that he got me in there on somebody else's studio time. I thought, they love me. Columbia Records loves me. You know? But that wasn't exactly the case. And
the really important part of the story, what happened when these executives found out that you were in the
I mean, I have named names, and it's probably the reason that I'm buried alive. Because you don't name names. I believed, you know, we lived in America, and that there were more. If you pissed off one important person, there was always another important person. That's not exactly the way it is. Cronyism is alive and kicking, and narcissism is alive and kicking, and all of those factors go into play. Again, it was a regime change, and the people who were in charge of A&R were not there anymore. And the people who were responsible for signing me to CBS weren't there anymore. And so Peter was in trouble, you know, basically. And I was unwittingly in trouble without realizing. I got to see the new president of Columbia Records, and I believed, because the session came out so amazing, and it was being played on underground radio. Then there was really such a thing as underground radio. There were radio stations that were independently owned, and there was such a thing as underground radio and pirate radio, and Beautiful People was being played by the Renegades. And I look at that now and I think, I wonder why. Why was it a rogue record? Beautiful People. I mean, who was I threatening? But now that I look back on it, I know exactly who I was threatening. But at that point, I didn't. And I thought I was going into that meeting of the new regime head with, he was going to be all positive about this. And that wasn't the case, even though the record was just kind of going viral all by itself, because they squashed the release. They didn't have it in record stores. So, I mean, you could hear the record on radio, but you couldn't buy the record. And so, which was, then they used to call that a turntable hit, because DJs were responsible for, they were partially responsible for the playlist. So a DJ in New York, WNEW, Roscoe, his name was, found Beautiful People and started playing it. And then other underground radio stations started playing it, and pirate radio stations in Europe started playing it. And it became a turntable hit, which is non-existent now. They don't have such a thing.
Right. Like you can't have a turntable hit because you don't even have that option. I mean, not the way that
they're controlled. It's all controlled. What you're hearing is meant to be what you're hearing. Nothing, gets out. I mean, even with social media, as soon as something becomes of interest and it's going viral, it gets scooped up and controlled.
And yet music is so uplifting and lighthearted. And it's
again, sure. I have songs that go, the saddest thing under the sun above is to say goodbye to the ones you love. And then I got a brand new pair of roller skates, and look what they've done to my song. Now that's been interpreted in 100 different ways. It's just, I never know where a thought will take me musically. And sometimes some pretty heavy lyrics are almost disguised in a musical frivolous context, I don't know why or how that happens, but it just, the lyric demands a particular thing. And even though it might seem contrary to the message of the song, that's the way it is. A song. I had the experience where I was writing with someone and they said, well, grammatically that is wrong. And I went, oh, sorry. It's just the way it is, and we obviously didn't gel and couldn't write together. But if you're going to be worried about grammar, I make up words all the time, words that don't exist. I make up, and they seem absolutely like they should be in a dictionary somewhere, but
Do you remember what you told me about the moment that you really enjoy? I'm sort of trying to build up to it.
Come on, give me more.
Okay, well, at the end of a song, you said that there's that moment when certain songs kind of hit home with the audience. And I think we were talking about tuning your guitar. Tuning my.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Self-assertive, high road kind of a point of view. Because the industry, I could feel, that they wanted to control, the music industry. Again, they don't want a bunch of artists telling them what's going to be successful. They want to be the controlling force. They want to know they put their money somewhere. That's what's going to happen. And they created that. And over the years, they have successfully gained complete and utter control over what people hear. And they will, whether you like it or not, you will like it eventually, because it's going to be in your ear everywhere, in unexpected places, in a clothing store, at the mall, in a movie theater, outside the movie theater, in a movie, on the radio, in heavy rotation. So no matter what, that investment that they made is going to pay off, because they have controlled how much you're going to hear it over and over. And familiarity is half the battle. Music is so powerful, and it can mean so much to individuals.
Was there some point at the beginning when you were running into this unexpected, I guess, counter intention, or these barriers you weren't expecting to have in America, that you just felt like maybe you should just drop it, or it wouldn't matter anyway?
No, I never really considered giving up. I've always enjoyed my private time. I like to plant things, cook, and take care of animals, and do that sort of thing. But it was never instead of singing and writing and reaching people. No, I never gave up, because I always had the backup of the live performance. And that would always tell me. And that is up until a couple of weeks ago, when I came back from the Netherlands. I had all those thousands of people that I spoke to and sang to. And I had that coming into me. I'm really fortunate that I can have people who uphold some sort of sensibility of mine, and they're there, and I know they're there, and it's just a matter of reaching them. I can't depend on an industry to do that. As right now, I'm an independent artist, and it's kind of it gives me a sense of hope, because there's so far to go. I have so far to go. But I know that I have sung to 500,000 people, and I've sung to 200,000 people, and I've sung to 200 people, and I've run the gamut of venues. And sometimes it was very, very big, very important, and a very big career move. And then sometimes nobody knew except the 200 people sitting in front of me, but they knew. And that in itself that's all I want, And it's always great to do a show with thousands of people who already know everything about you, and you're instantly loved before you even begin a note, and that happens, you know, for unexpected I never understand. There are areas, you go to and everybody knows Melanie, Ruby Tuesday, or look what they've done to my song. But there are areas I go to and who's Melanie, and it's whatever it is, I have earned the power that I feel inside by educating those people who don't know.
I guess that's like the real deal, like the real meat and potatoes of what we're looking for. I think the human interaction through the arts, it's amazing. I'm so grateful that that exists, Melanie, and that you brought that.
When I went to school, half my, in grade school, we had 6 months of, or half the school year was art and this art appreciation, and the other half was music appreciation. And what we would learn is what makes orchestra, what makes an arpeggio. We were learning what is music, and we were quizzed on what sound is that. Well, that's a clarinet. What makes a song? What is a melody? What is a melody? How many notes are there in a melody? Well, that's just what we learn. There is no such thing. But what's a chord progression? Just basic appreciation of what it is to create music. So that I didn't even realize it was going out of our public schools. Now, public school, when I was growing up, was a noble middle class school. It had a nobility, and wealthy people went to public school and poor kids went to public school. But it was a middle class education, and we learned music appreciation and art appreciation. What is a design? What is a color scheme? Just basic ideas of what art and music are. And it's gone. There is no such thing. You could pick an elective, and then I decided I would join the choir. And I thought I was so clever. I knew music and I knew how to write songs. I was little. I was a kid. I was writing songs when I was 5, I mean, I wouldn't play them back, but I was writing songs. But so when I went to chorus, and our teacher, Mr. Dilsner, was a very emotional person. He would explain what the song was, how the writer wrote it, what he was going through when he wrote it, and what each lyric meant. And there was one song that I thought was so corny, corny, that expression was tacky, corny, melodramatic. I don't know what you'd call it, but there was one song, and it was about a silver ring. And I just said, I was very bold. And I said something in the middle of the class. I raised my hand and had a comment. And it was to challenge that song. I was challenging the song, what it meant. And that, I listened to Brenda Lee on the radio. and this doesn't have any kind of a beat, or and he just looked at me, And he decided he was going to teach me something. I get choked up thinking about this because he said something to me, and I really don't remember the words, but he so put me in my place because he opened up a world of music to me that didn't exist until that very moment. And when I challenged him, he decided to take that challenge. And he wasn't showing the rest of the class how brilliant he was and how much he was going to, but he knew that there was something and a good reason to tell this girl why he was doing this particular song. And that made such an impression on me. I was quiet, and it really was impacted my life because I was being a millennial way before were millennials. You know, I was being that smart ass, cynical kid questioning this overly melodramatic song that meant so much to Mr. Dilsner, meant nothing to me. But he was going to make sure I felt something from this song. I'll never forget that song. And I'll never forget that moment when I realized there's so much more to music than being cool and being, you know, it had nothing to do with my age. He was an old guy. I was young. And I was going to show him, you know, how cool I was. And he just had it down. I mean, he told me why it was important. And I got it.
This has been a really, really awesome time. And I'm so grateful that you were able to do this when you're getting busy with all of the Thanksgiving and Christmas stuff that I know that you do. Expecting to see like Christmas lights all around the fireplace, and
there will be garland, and there will be pine and holly and mistletoe and all of those things.
Excited that we finally got started on this. You look amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You look amazing. You look so great.
Yeah, I think performing just gives you a new life, you know, just that I can do it, you know, it's just, and I remembered all my lyrics, you know, all of that stuff, you know.